Welcome to episode number 263 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for all of you marketing, advertising, public relations, and communications professionals. You can find us by searching Beyond Social Media Show. We are recording live on YouTube on March 16, 2019. A ton of things to talk about this week, as usual, including Once Upon a Try, Hacker President, Vowel-less Twitter, Character count, school docs, flywheel growth, tune-out abuse, AR stories, marketing a slaughter, recognizing your face, Jaguar selfies, Reddit dredge, and a lot more. We started off with best story of the week, and BL has that honor. BL, what was that?
Well, given all the horrible news this week, I wanted to start with something kind of lovely. So Google Arts and Culture is featuring epic fails and happy accidents. And if you don't know what Google Arts and Culture is, please do take a look at the links, because they have more than 8,000. Oh, excuse me, I lost my place. Okay, there are 3 collections from Israel's National Library that are featured in a new exhibit on Google Arts and Culture, and it's called Once Upon a Try. It's the largest online exhibition about inventions and discoveries ever curated. More than 400 interactive exhibitions, collections, and interactive stories from 110 renowned institutions across 23 countries are included on Google Arts and Culture, and this is the latest one. The idea is to present giant leaps in science and technology progress and the visionaries behind them, and then tales of epic fails and happy accidents that led to the triumphs. So the National Library's contributions to Once Upon a Try include a selection of Sir Isaac Newton's theological papers from its unique collection of nearly 8,000 of Newton's handwritten manuscripts. There's in the collection Die Hard, The Race to Revolutionize the Color Red, and an exploration of the dye industry and how it came upon the color red that we recognize as red these days, how red evolved through history and was shaped to the current color red that we all recognize. And there's another collection of maps of the Holy Land and Jerusalem, and it's absolutely a remarkable bunch of maps alongside maps of other parts of the world. And you can zoom into close-ups of the maps with a collection of 1,500 maps. So there's also works by Abraham Ortelius, who created the first modern atlas. It's absolutely the first time that anything like this has been made public in the way that Google Arts and Culture only can do it, and it's free.
It is a fantastic resource. I always enjoy checking it out. So you've reminded me to check it out again.
It's such wonderful stuff.
It is. So this, the great Willie or won't he finally answered the question of whether Beto O'Rourke was going to run for president. He announced this week and got blanket media coverage as a result. But one interesting story that popped up was from Reuters. Joseph Menn reports that Beto O'Rourke, during his teenage years, belonged to one of the oldest groups of computer hackers in U.S. history. So the group was called the highly influential Cult of the Dead Cow, which is a joking reference to an abandoned Texas slaughterhouse. They were notorious for releasing tools that allowed people to hack computers running Microsoft Windows. Microsoft Windows back in the day was notoriously insecure. They didn't pay as much attention to patching their vulnerabilities as they do now. So this group kind of brought attention to that by releasing tools to allow ordinary people to hack Microsoft Windows. They also are known for inventing the word hacktivism to describe human rights-driven security work. So O'Rourke, members of this group have been protecting O'Rourke's identity within the group for decades, and now they've come out to acknowledge his participation in the group as part of a series of interviews that this reporter has done for a book about the group. So more than a dozen members have agreed to be named in the book, and O'Rourke was interviewed early in his run for Senate for the group. So it's not a surprise to O'Rourke that this story is coming out, I'm sure. There's no indication that O'Rourke has ever engaged in some of the edgier kind of hacking activities, such as breaking into computers or writing code that enabled other people to do so. But his membership, this writer argues, could explain his approach to politics. You may remember in 2016, as a congressman, O'Rourke and other congresspeople were holding a sit-in in the House of Representatives to force a floor debate on gun control, which then Speaker Ryan called a recess, which invoked a congressional rule that C-SPAN can't broadcast while the chamber is not in session. So he effectively cut off coverage of it through C-SPAN. So O'Rourke pulled out his iPhone and started broadcasting on Facebook Live, which C-SPAN then picked up from the live feed. So the stunt drew attention to the Republicans' refusal to deliberate the issue, and showed O'Rourke's kind of technical savvy and willingness to kind of upend convention. Given that technology is playing such an increasingly fundamental role in our national and political and personal security and in the economy and our everyday life, his background as a hacker is fascinating to me. He may be one of the best prepared candidates to govern, given our challenges that we have with cyber warfare, data security, privacy, government transparency, digital propaganda, the internet infrastructure, a whole host of things. He appears to hold some libertarian views, which are kind of the Silicon Valley philosophy that has led to some of the most damaging aspects of social media. So there's that. He's kind of a tabula rasa right now, so we'll have to wait for policy details and everything. On the plus side, as a candidate, he's obviously a natural campaigner. He can turn out people to rallies and can raise money. We'll see how it goes, but fascinating development that somebody with that background is actually running for president.
Well, the other story that came out was that he was in a political punk rock band, and he was the lead singer and guitar player, and he was really good at it. I mean, I'm in for Beto. I really am. I think that he might be what we need now. And so, beside from the hand thing. He says somebody's got to give him some media training and get that to stop. But anyway, there's a new prototype app of Twitter, and it's called TWTTR, which was what Twitter originally thought about calling itself. And this is from a TechCrunch story and an NBC News story. So it's from Sarah Perez and Chiara Sutile. And they rolled out a new prototype app called Twitter, without the I, to a select group of testers, and I'm not among them. But the prototype was created to give Twitter a separate space outside its public network to experiment with new ideas about how Twitter should look, feel, and operate. It focuses on changes to replies, and the goal is to make longer conversations easier to read, which is absolutely something that would be helpful. The company said that it'll likely continue to test new ideas in the app in the future, and even the features seen at the moment are likely to change as they respond to feedback. One of the things you'll notice scrolling through conversations on the new app is that engagements are hidden on people's individual tweets, which means there's no heart favicon and no retweet icon, no bubble reply icon, and no sharing icon that we're used to seeing on tweets. So what happens is if you want to interact with a tweet using one of those options, you tap on the tweet and they appear, but they don't come up. I'm not quite sure why they want to do away with that, but they do. Then the tweet pops up and becomes your focus, and all the interaction buttons are there, including the option to start typing your reply. fly. It's in a public beta test, and changes may never be integrated into the core experience. It's made changes. This is really interesting. It's made changes in how Twitter's camera functions. So speaking at Twitter's South by Southwest house in Austin, they said that users will be able to post pictures, videos, and live streams with a different look when they capture them live. So it's the first major camera update on Twitter since 2016. And what you'll see is that the camera is more easily accessible. You're just going to have to swipe left, like everybody's used to doing that. Have to swipe left from the timeline, and the camera's smart. It knows where you are, and it knows the hashtags that people are using for the event or the news that you're about to show. And you'll also have, I think this is really interesting, you'll have the ability to follow an event just like you follow a person. So once in the camera, you can add 6 different colors plus captions, locations, hashtags as overlays on your photos, your videos, or your live broadcasts. So everybody's taking features from each other in social media. The features are similar to what you have now on Instagram and Snapchat, but Twitter hopes that the enhanced camera is going to get users posting more videos, photos, and live broadcasts on the platform, and I'm quite sure it will.
Very cool. Very cool.
Isn't
Well,
that?
yeah. Well, adding automatic features to and knowing that you're at an event will, I think, help create more content around that event, because it just setting up a live feed for an event is a little bit of a nuisance if you want to do it right for most people. So just making it easier, I can see it creating more content.
And also, they're going to make it easier for you to see the replies that are directed toward you, because right now in a long stream, like you might be buried in there. So
Yeah.
you're going to be able to follow a conversation more easily. I think it sounds like a bunch of great changes.
Yeah, sounds good. More coverage from Sarah Perez and TechCrunch of Twitter. Last week, we talked about LinkedIn's podcast, Hello Monday. This week, we talk about Twitter launching a new podcast. So everybody's getting into the podcast game. Twitter's podcast is called Character Count, and they are testing the waters with it. So they've produced 5 episodes already, and they're around 25 to 30 minutes in length. They plan to wait to record more shows until they get a reaction to the first few episodes. They're dipping their toe in the water of podcasting, not going all in. Then they will make adjustments if need be, based on the feedback they get. The podcast is hosted by Joe Wadlington, who is a marketer at Twitter, and it's specifically supporting Twitter's business initiatives. So each episode is going to talk to people behind the scenes of some of Twitter's advertising stories. The podcast I listened to had the Monterey Bay Aquarium people talking about their use of Twitter. Dropbox, Simon Schuster are also subjects. The companies discuss how they built effective ad campaigns, so it's really about Twitter advertising and why Twitter's audience mattered to them. The episodes, new episodes are released every 2 weeks. They're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, and Stitcher.
So it's kind of like Twitter's version of How I Built That,
Yeah, I
in a
guess
way.
you'd say that, yeah.
So this is so silly, but this is a story from The Atlantic by Taylor Lorenz, and you wouldn't believe it, but the best way for kids to pass notes, the hottest new chat app for kids is Google Docs. And the reason for that is that a lot of schools now have laptops and computers. And so what kids do is when they want to tell their friends something, they don't scroll a note down on a tiny piece of paper and pass it around the room the way we did. What they do is they organize running conversations behind the teacher's back. So teens said they use Google Docs to chat anytime they need to put their phone away. I mean, because there's no way you're going to outsmart people who want to talk, and they know their friends are going to be on computers. So sometimes they use the live chat function, which doesn't open by default, and which many teachers don't even know exists. Or they take advantage of the fact that Google allows users to highlight certain phrases or words and then comment on them via a pop-up box on the right side. So they'll clone a teacher's shared Google document, then chat in the comments, so it appears to the casual viewer that they're just making notes on the lesson plan. But if the teacher takes a closer look and looks at the resolve button, the entire thread disappears, which is hilarious.
It is hilarious, and for that reason, I was going to include it in the show notes, but you got to it first, so good good for you. It's a great story. I came across a video of a presentation that Brian Halligan, who's the CEO of HubSpot, gave for the keynote for the 2018 Inbound Conference, which HubSpot hosts every year. And it was fascinating. He was talking about the traditional funnel, and you think about the traditional marketing funnel, and it's marketing, sales, and out drops a customer at the bottom, right? So a very simple funnel. Everybody's familiar with it. Have been using it for years. But Halligan told a story about how he has been interviewing HubSpot customers for more than 10 years and would ask them what the most influential voice in their head was when they made the decision to buy HubSpot. And for the past 10 years, people have been saying, well, we follow your blog, we like your content, it's great content. Your salesperson was very helpful. So, sales and marketing was how they made the decision. He said, though, over the last 2 years, their answers have changed dramatically to, well, our friend talked us into it. So word of mouth is the loudest voice in their head when they decide to buy HubSpot. So his presentation was basically the traditional funnel is broken, that customers are not an output from the traditional funnel, they are actually an input. So he talked about Jeff Bezos, who talks about the flywheel. So a flywheel is a machine part that's good at capturing, releasing energy, and it's a fundamental part of the steam engine. Bezos talked about the flywheel as a metaphor for basically the more sellers you get, the more selection you get in inventory, the better the customer experience becomes, and the more traffic is driven as a result of that experience. It's a virtuous circle. It drives the more you get of sellers, the more selection you get, the better the customer experience, the more people talk about it, the more traffic is driven to the site, and it creates a virtuous circle. Halligan took that idea and tweaked it for his own purposes, and basically came up with his own flywheel, which is attract customers, engage with the customers, and then delight customers. And putting the emphasis on delight equals growth. So the way that you grow now is to delight customers as much as you can, whereas before you engaged customers to get more growth. So how does the entire customer experience? The result is, how does the entire customer experience delight those customers to the point that they rave about you? It's a fascinating video. We'll put a link to it in the show notes so you can watch the whole thing. But it's an interesting way of thinking about how word of mouth now is, and you think about it, the brands that you like the best have a great customer experience throughout the entire experience. So I just thought I wanted to mention it, and then we'll put a link in the show notes so people can see it.
I'd like to see that. So Google this week launched an extension to tune out abusive comments. This is from a Product Hunt story by Alfred Ng. I was conflicted about whether this goes in best or worst news of the week, because if you read the comments in articles on social media posts and articles online, you know how fast they devolve into trolling and abuse. And so most people ignore them, but it's clear that there's some of the leading things that make social media what Lady Gaga recently called the toilet of the internet. On Wednesday, Google launched an experimental Chrome extension called Toon, and its goal is to hide toxic comments on social sites, including YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. It's part of a conversational AI research project made by Google's Jigsaw division, a unit of Alphabet that aims to use technology to make the world safer, which is a nice goal. It works by letting you set the volume of toxic comments that you see across different sites down to Zen mode to skip over comments completely, or you can turn them up and see them all. You can adjust it site by site in case you only want to block toxic comments on Facebook, but you want to see every post on Reddit, although God knows why you'd want to do that. You'll also be able to filter based on certain terms. So if you're specifically looking to block negative comments with threats or explicitly sexual attacks and insults, you can do that. There's a filter mix that's all very experimental and at the moment has a lot of false positives. So the product manager at Jigsaw, CJ Adams, said it isn't perfect and it will still miss toxic comments or accidentally block comments that are perfectly fine. When it was first launched, it was mistakenly considered trash talk over sports to be it was calling trash talk over sports online harassment. So he says, based on our brief test, it certainly didn't hide everything, and it was difficult to spot the differences between some of the settings in terms of comments it would show. So it still helps highlight our efforts to scale online abuse management, which we'll talk more about later in the show. It's simply not possible for humans to do it alone. And Google says no personal information is stored in the extension, but who's going to believe that?
There's that. So I don't have any good stories left.
I have another one. It's another Google story. Google's letting YouTube creators add AR selfies to their stories. And this is from a mobile marketer story by Robert Williams. YouTube creators can add augmented reality selfie filters to their stories. It's from a blog post that Google updated this week. They updated RCore, and that's their software development kit for AR experiences. It has an augmented faces API that lets creators add masks, glasses, 3D hats, and other things to their selfies. And Google said its machine learning technology doesn't require a dedicated scanner as found in some smartphone models to create a detailed model of a person's face. It creates a 3D image from a single camera and tracks your movement and facial expressions more accurately to create the 3D mesh that's necessary. So YouTube creators, who generally have to have at least 10,000 subscribers, are the first people who got access to it. Later, there'll be expanded YouTube stories that are mobile-only videos that disappear after a week. When YouTube's latest AR tech is it's limited to the creator community, the AR Core and ML Face Kit and Contour Detection API are available to all software developers, which means ad agencies and mobile marketers and software development teams can now start creating AR experiences for smartphone users. So the examples abound: virtual try-ons for makeup, hair coloring, hats, glasses, jewelry. And by developing AR technology that doesn't require a 3D depth scanner, Google's is taking aim at Apple's rival operating system. Apple added depth scanning hardware to the iPhone X in 2017 to power its Face ID security feature and emojis. So, everybody's stealing from everybody. Everybody's trying to make everybody happy, and that's just the way it all is working.
Well, they're also getting a larger data set of faces to improve their facial recognition technology.
And I have a story about that, too. Oh, go ahead. You have bad news?
I do. The worst story of the week was the slaughter in New Zealand in Christchurch, New Zealand. This is an article by Washington Post reporter Abby Olheiser, who discussed how basically the murderer who slaughtered all these people designed his horrific attack to go viral. So this guy is accused of killing 49 people in attacks on 2 separate New Zealand mosques. When he did so, he started with an audience. So he appears to have used a GoPro helmet camera and live streamed his attack, speaking to his users on 8chan, whom he alerted moments earlier before he started the attack. So the live stream served as entertainment to the most twisted parts of the internet, but also as part of an online trap for everyone else. The author of this article argues, because the manifesto was full of in-jokes that would delight the 8chan audience, but confuse people who aren't familiar with those in-jokes and who found the live stream. So the manifesto was posted to Twitter, to Facebook, to 8chan. It was a 74-page document that combines white supremacist and Islamophobic thoughts with references to kind of obscure memes that only the 8chan audience would recognize. The article says basically this guy created a press release for racism, and in 2019 it's mass murderers want to go viral now, and social media is making it easier for them to do so. The manifesto was created by someone who understands the internet and how to weaponize it. He had two audiences: the racist people, the anonymous racist people on 8chan who would take delight in this, and the media, which would lead the rest of the world's search for meaning, right? So you think the New Zealand gunman created a message that was designed to exploit these two systems to go viral. His claims could... before his claims could be examined and contextualized. If you think about the 8chan audience, he alerted them before he started his attack, and their action watching the live stream got the attention of the algorithms, created spikes in views of the live stream, generated engagement and discussion around the content, which helped to propel that content in greater visibility through the algorithms. So the horrific attack itself got attention of the media. That they set the media in the motion. They did their job. They're on reporting it on a global scale. So a lot of reporters are reporting this. They continued their engagement, the engagement with the video, which again boosted signals with the algorithm and the manifesto document. So all that action contributed signals for the algorithms to pick up, and then they began publishing stories. So their stories explain and examine the manifesto, which contains these references to obscure racist memes, which they name in the coverage. They name and explain it in their stories. And that creates signals for algorithms to boost visibility of those memes, which set in motion the readers and the viewers who begin searching on a massive scale about these memes and create more engagement signals for the algorithms to pick up. So for the algorithms, all this activity equals mainstream interest. And that again boosts the visibility for everyone to be able to see. So it was diabolical in its understanding of how these systems work, and I urge everybody to read the article, because it educates you on how this works and how not to react to this kind of content to create signals that actually boost its visibility.
God, what a horror. Well, from another point of view, in Wired, Issy Lepowski has a story about why didn't tech stop the attack from going viral. As you were explaining, this was everywhere, and various versions of the video were readily searchable using basic keywords like the shooter's name. It played for only 17 minutes on Facebook, which might be argued to be a short time, or it might be way too long. It's really hard to say, what that really equals. But the Christchurch massacre has people wondering, why haven't tech companies figured out a way to stop these videos from spreading? This is not the first time this has happened. And what Lepowski says is the answer may be disappointingly simple. It's a lot harder than it sounds to do that. Automated moderation systems are imperfect. They can be effective. At YouTube, the vast majority of all videos are removed through automation, and 73% of the ones that are automatically flagged are removed before anybody even sees them. But things get much trickier when it comes to live videos and videos that are broadcast in the news. So the footage of the Christchurch shooting was both of those things, live and in the news. And it's still unclear why it was able to play for 17 minutes on Facebook, or, you know, how they could have made it shorter. But one of the issues is that people alter the videos to avoid detection, because people are smart enough to know that they can do that. So in order to catch the videos that have been altered, for instance, videos of the footage playing on a second screen, Facebook is using the same AI that it uses to spot blood and gore, and also audio detection technology. And it says when it finds content coming from links to other platforms, it's sharing the information with those companies, but that still doesn't stop it from happening. A Google representative added that videos of the shooting that have news value are going to remain up on Google, which puts the company in the tricky position of having to decide which videos are in fact newsworthy. And that was part of the problem, because the video was part of the news story. So YouTube in particular has been criticized for deleting videos of atrocities in Syria that researchers were relying on. And so tech companies are in a really tough position, because they not only have to try to assess news value, but they have to figure out how to automate these assessments at scale and quickly. So finally, there's the perpetual problem of scale. It's possible that both YouTube and Facebook have grown too big to moderate. Some people say that. And if these Christchurch videos pop up faster than YouTube can take them down, then some people say YouTube should stop all video uploads until it has a handle on the problem. But the sad truth is, and this is what Lepowski says, and I think she's right, if Facebook and YouTube ceased operations every time a heinous post went viral, they might never start up again. So all of this is precisely the shooter's strategy, excuse me, to exploit human behavior and technology's inability to keep up with it. Horrible.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the solution is that citizens, ordinary people, need to become more media savvy about about how this stuff works and what not to do in the wake of it. What often happens is when some appalling event occurs, people will share some content related to that event to express their outrage or their disapproval. And what they're actually doing is contributing to the visibility of that content by engaging with it. So, you know, we need to find.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We need to find a way to communicate about these things without actually boosting the ability of the thing of which we disapprove.
Well, the other thing is people need to vet the information sources that they're spreading, and before they spread them, and that doesn't happen in these situations. It's a pretty complicated problem.
Yeah, yeah. So here's not a complicated. This is a very simply solved problem. From a CNN story by Faith Kamiri and Amanda Watts, who report on a 30-something woman in Arizona who decided to cross a barrier to take a selfie in front of a jaguar exhibit at the Wildlife World Zoo in Litchfield Park. And of course, she was attacked by the jaguar. The woman escaped after an onlooker threw a water bottle into the cage and distracted the jaguar. She survived. She's well enough to have returned to the zoo to apologize and admit fault. The zoo responded to the incident perfectly on Twitter, assuring the public that, quote, "We can promise you nothing will happen to our jaguar. She's a wild animal, and there were proper barriers in place to keep our guests safe. Not a wild animal's fault when barriers are crossed. Still sending prayers to her and her family." But this example right here is, well, you know, their barriers are in place for a reason. And this is, you know, if you don't believe in evolution, this is natural selection happening right before your eyes.
Darwinism. That's great. That really is. So there's a dirty little secret about facial recognition that Olivia Solange shared on NBC News. In order to get better, facial recognition systems algorithms have to be fed hundreds of thousands of images of a very diverse variety of faces. And we've talked about how they're not good at detecting faces of color. But increasingly, these photos are coming from the internet, where they're swept up by the millions without us knowing who posted them, categorized by age, gender, skin tone, and dozens of other metrics. And then they're shared with researchers at universities and companies, and they may be practicing on your face or mine. NBC News created a tool that lets you enter your name to see if your photo was scraped. Mine wasn't, but you might want to check. Not that you could do anything about it, actually, but as the algorithms get more advanced, meaning they're better able to identify women and people of color, a task they struggle with to this day, legal experts and civil rights advocates are sounding the alarm on researchers' use of photos of ordinary people. These people's faces are used without their consent in order to power technology that could eventually be used to surveil them and us. That's a particular concern for minorities who could be profiled and targeted. It's a dirty little secret of AI training sets. Researchers often just grab whatever images are available in the wild, said NYU law school professor Jason Schultz. The latest company to enter this territory was IBM. And in January, they released a collection of nearly 1 million photos that were taken from Flickr and coded to describe the subject's appearance. IBM promoted the collection to researchers as a progressive step towards reducing bias in facial recognition. But some of the photographers whose images were included were surprised and disconcerted when NBC told them that the photographs had been annotated with details including facial geometry and skin tone used to develop facial recognition algorithms. So NBC News actually obtained IBM's data set after the company declined to share it, saying it could only be used for academic or corporate research groups. But as NBC proved, that's not true. So despite IBM's assurances that Flickr users can opt out of the database, NBC News discovered that's almost impossible. And to get the photos removed, IBM requires photographers to email links to photos they want removed, but the company hasn't shared the list of Flickr users and photos in their data set. So there's really no easy way to find out if you or someone you know has their photos included. And surprisingly, IBM did not respond to questions about the process.
Well, I've got a lot of photos on Flickr, right? And
Me too.
probably likely I'm in there.
Well, no, it's like they may have taken, yeah, your face. You can test it on this little app. I'll include a link.
All right.
They didn't use me. Do you have more bad news, Dave?
I do not. I'm done with bad news.
Well, I have some. Reddit has now become a battleground of alleged Chinese trolls. This is from a BuzzFeed news story by Craig Silverman and Jane Liftenenko, I think is how you say it. There's probably been foreign government intervention in social media channels for years, but the news has started leading to more media literacy, hopefully, by users. And last week, a Reddit user posed a question on the Canadian news subreddit, On Guard for Thee. Ever wonder why Canadian subreddits are becoming littered with Chinese propaganda? And in the view of that group, the Chinese government-sponsored users are involved in a coordinated effort to spread propaganda and bury anti-China messages on Reddit. And many users on Reddit agreed, saying they've seen threads about China downvoted or inundated with trolls posting comments they believe are in line with Chinese propaganda. So public threads reflect growing concern among Redditors that this pro-China accounts are coordinated to spread this news. So according to a moderator who spoke to BuzzFeed News, they want to have intense discussions taking place behind the scenes to help oversee these subreddits. So it's generally the geopolitics subreddit gets 1 million visits a month, and they said the most active and aggressive effort they've witnessed to date is by pro-China accounts. So this is bad news.
Yeah, Reddit.
But I think it's been there all along. I think it's everywhere. I think people are just starting to pay attention to it. I don't think this just happened.
Probably. I don't know. I don't pay a lot of attention to Reddit.
Well, you know, Reddit actually has some really good news information, and there are some subreddits that are really helpful and interesting. So I wouldn't ignore it. It's got some pretty good sources.
Yeah, well, I mean, once I come up with a reason to market on Reddit, I'll probably start paying attention to it.
But you actually could. That's the point.
Yeah.
So I don't have any shiny objects this
All
week.
right, I got two of them. This is first one from Anna Crow at Search Engine Journal, who posted a fantastic 2019 calendar of marketing events that you can actually use. So you can download it. It has, for example, April. It has a list of April events. April is Earth Month. April is National Volunteer Month. It is Poetry Month. National Princess Week occurs in April. April Fool's Day, of course, and Tax Day are in April. Coachella Music Festival is from the 12th to the 21st in April. And National Superhero Day occurs on the 28th. So you can get all this and more from her fantastic calendar of marketing events in the form of a Google Sheet or a Google Calendar. There's instructions for installing them. So you can, like, I've got my Google Calendar installed, and just click a checkbox on Google Calendar to show it. And now I've got all the marketing events that she's compiled. You can also sign up to get the updated 2020 marketing calendar. So fantastic. We'll put a link to this in the show notes. And then the other one is Color Meanings. It's a website by Jacob Olison, who is, surprise, a designer, put together this fantastic website to teach you what you need to know about the meanings of various colors. I was searching for it because I was doing a project for a client and putting together a presentation and wanted to think about the psychology of the colors that we're using. So, for example, blue seeks, I'm quoting from the site here, blue seeks peace and tranquility and promotes physical and mental relaxation. The color blue reduces stress and creates a sense of calmness, relaxation, and order. Try and lie on your back and look up at the blue cloudless sky. Blue lowers metabolism. The paler the blue color, the more free we feel. Blue color meaning is known to be good at one-way communication, which was good because I was using a presentation that was designed for one-way communication, so blue was appropriate for that, especially communication with your voice. It's the teacher, the public speaker. Dark blue is associated with knowledge, power, integrity, and professionalism, which is exactly what I needed for this presentation. So check out the site. It has in-depth descriptions of all the psychological aspects of different colors. It's a fantastic resource.
How'd the presentation go, Dave?
I was creating the presentation. I wasn't giving it. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's all. I mean, I know that when I was doing a website for my client who's an autism physical trainer, we used the color blue that is considered to be the color of autism. It's the color that Autism Speaks uses. It's basically become that color to represent autism, and using it puts you in that circle, which is interesting.
Very cool. So you've got a project, BL?
Well, it's not exactly a project. It was kind of a surprise. My friend Toby Bloomberg posted this article from 2007 that was part of something called Blogger Stories that I don't actually remember, but I'm included in it and saying the same thing I could say now about why I blog, and I could add podcasting to it, and it's 12 years later. And part of it was, talking about how early I started in blogging and why. And I said the beauty of blogging is that it offers instant publishing and allows me to write at 3 a.m. if I choose, and that without an IT person to post it for me, because that's what I used to need before I had a blog. And it was like such freedom and such joy. And I said I blog to show my sheer love of writing and sharing information and listening to my readers. So it's big fun. And I've done experiential marketing campaigns on blogs, and learned that you can have big click-through rates and advertising on blogs. And I said in 2007, I'm completely addicted to blogging, but hey, I could be doing a lot worse things. And so right now I could say all that about podcasting, because we could just get out here and do it. We don't need a big studio. We don't need a lot of equipment. We're sitting here in front of our respective computers, and we're able to share information with hundreds of people. And so I have to say I'm kind of addicted to this, but it was fun to see that come up. And Toby posted and said, kind of nice to know you were right all along. And I don't know if it proves that, but it proves I've been doing this for a long time.
Very cool.
So do we have any politics? I have one.
I don't. I already gave my politics one.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right, Beto. This is a net neutrality scoreboard, and it's from an organization called Common Dreams. And it's a scoreboard that shows where members of Congress stand on net neutrality and how much money they've received from the telecom industry. It was started by a coalition of digital rights groups this past Tuesday to pressure lawmakers to co-sponsor the Save the Internet Act before Friday, the day before the congressional recess. They didn't do that, but it said enough is enough. There are absolutely no excuses for not supporting this bill. That's from a statement that Evan Greer, who's the director of Fight for the Future, made. Voters from across the political spectrum are pissed off and have made it clear that they want strong net neutrality rules back in place as soon as possible. If you choose to put the telecom giants ahead of your constituents, we will make sure that every one of your constituents knows you sold them out for cable money. You have until the close of business on Friday, March 15th, which has come and gone. But by the Fight for Future's count, more than 300 members of the House and over 50 senators have yet to co-sponsor the Save the Internet Act. Senator Kristen Sinema of Arizona is the only member of the Senate Democratic Caucus who has not backed the legislation. As a result, she's a target of a crowdfunded billboard that accuses her of siding with corporate donors to kill net neutrality. They plan to unleash a flood of calls, emails, and tweets if this doesn't happen, and it didn't. It would have restored the net neutrality rules that were repealed by the Republican-controlled Federal Communications Commission. Very sad.
Yeah. Yep. That's all I gotta say about
yep
that.
Again, yeah. Okay, Dave.
So let's wrap this up. Why customers abandon feedback surveys? I'll bet you can guess.
They're too long.
Exactly. 57% of people said they're too long. The survey's too long. So if you want people's feedback, make it absolutely easy for them to give it to you. The next one was too personal. So 34% said the survey asked for sensitive information. 23% said no resolution. My feedback will not be acted upon. So why should I take the survey? So they have no faith in the company asking for the feedback. Too impersonal, generic survey. The questions didn't match the experience I had. 22% said that. 20% said the survey had an unclear purpose. They're uncertain about the goal of the survey. 20% not mobile friendly. Interesting. Got to design your surveys so that people can fill them out online, which means they shouldn't be very long. Survey fatigue. 14% said they'd just taken another survey by the same brand. And finally, 12% said the survey link had expired. So, yeah, pretty basic stuff there.
You get these emails and they say, please do this survey. It will only take 3 minutes. And then it's got like 20 questions. Yeah. They're so annoying. And then there's the ones who send you a survey every time you interact with them. So in the case of Squarespace, for me, sometimes that's 5 times a day. And I get the survey, how do we do? You suck.
Stop annoying me by asking.
Right? So that brings us to the end of episode 263 of the Beyond Social Media Show. And to find us, all you got to do is search Beyond Social Media Show. You'll find links and the replay of the video on beyondsocialmediashow.com/263. And we'd love for you to leave us a review at beyondsocialmediashow.com/love. And we'd really love you to listen to the podcast on iTunes and leave us a review there. So David Erickson is found on Twitter at D Erickson, on Instagram as DE Erickson. He blogs at eStrategy Blog, and you should be reading his newsletter and his content because Dave is a content machine. I am BL Ochman, and I'm on Twitter as What's Next. I blog at What's Next Blog. I'm on YouTube as What's Next Blog. My site is blochman.com. The show, BeyondSocialMediaShow.com. On YouTube, we're Beyond Social Media Show. We're BS Media Show on Twitter. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Google Home. All you have to do is say, play the latest episode of Beyond Social Media Show, and we'll be right there with you. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.